Should the death penalty be legal in the United States? Hi, my name is Samantha Pena, and I'm going to be discussing my views on the death penalty and the pros and cons of the death penalty in the United States specifically. The death penalty has been around for as long as mankind has been around from the history that we can see, but it has been specifically legally in the United States since the 1600s. Now, we do not put people to death now like we used to, such as for thieves. They would say burn them, drown them, shoot them. Now we have come up with a more humane approach, such as lethal injection, even though some states do still use the electric chair. Many today still do not believe that the death penalty is something that is necessary. In our justice system, though, I feel that it is a great deterrence for people. The last thing somebody wants is to be put to death. Even you'll see in cases that somebody has, say, murdered multiple people or possibly a serial rapist, and they will only plead guilty if the death penalty is taken off the table, because no matter what they've done, they're still human and it scares them. So many people will even see this. They don't want to spend time in prison. That's why they'll do everything in their power to try to avoid being caught for the crime or to even try to avoid getting into that kind of criminal behavior. One key thing that people fight is believing that the Eighth Amendment is being violated, although the Supreme Court has upheld that this is not true. The lethal injection is usually comprised of 3 different injections. First, the prisoner is brought in, and they are able to say their last words, and they are brought down and put on a gurney. After they've been able to say their last words, everything is read out to them, and usually it is somebody who just presses the button after they leave the room, and there's 3 drugs that are injected into them. The 3 main drugs is a sedative first to relax them and put them to sleep. Then they get an injection that generally paralyzes their bodies. And then the most common thing is they're given potassium chloride. This stops the heart as it's extremely toxic. One of the main concerns with some citizens is, are we actually putting someone to death that deserves it? Well, like I said earlier, it is true there has been innocent people, but they reckon that within 1,000 people on death row, 9 of them possibly could be innocent. So even if all 9 were innocent, that's less than 1%. So the possibility is there. There is absolutely no way of being perfect, not even in the justice system. But unfortunately, it's a necessary risk and necessary evil, as some would say, for justice to be brought to people. A lot of people think about the inmate's rights, but they're forgetting about the victim of the crime that could still be alive, or the victim of the crime and they're gone. When someone commits a crime on somebody, it has a chain reaction. Not only say is that person dead, but that person could have been a mom, a dad, they could have been a brother or sister. The possibilities are endless. It has a chain reaction. Rights of the inmates are thought of also during execution. This is why they are given last meal request, the ability to talk to a pastor if they have religious beliefs, and the ability to see loved ones before their execution, usually within 24 hours, even if those loved ones are not allowed to actually view the execution. That is something that generally has to be applied for. Another topic is cost. Yes, it is very true that the cost of executing somebody is a lot higher. It's substantially higher, actually. The average inmate is about $1 million on average in the States. This is from the time they're convicted. It doesn't matter if they're 20 years old, 40 years old, until they're dead. Versus somebody on death row, that could be anywhere from 1.5 million to 2 million. The reason for this is they are in a maximum security. They're not out in the population like everybody else gets to do in the minimum security prisons. They are in a facility where they're only allowed out an hour a day. This is not only for their safety, this is for other inmates' safety, this is for guard safety. This is a lot more expensive because of the way that they have to be housed. But why? Why do we wait sometimes 16 years, 20 years? You hear sometimes on the news where someone has been on death row for over 30 years and they died of cancer, which is in the way it's a life sentence. Why are we waiting so long to execute people that even after they've appealed over and over and had their case looked over again, it's been proven time and time again that they did commit the crime? So why are we spending the extra costs? It would be much more cost effective to have them executed within the first couple of years. Not only is this going to reduce populations in maximum security prisons, you're not going to need as many of them. The only downside of this is less guards. The most common form was hanging. After hangings were ruled out, it became very common to use the electric chair. Now, the electric chair is something that is still used in the United States today, although it hasn't been recorded in over 10 years. This, along with hanging, is something that I personally believe is not humane, as it can go wrong. Just like hanging, they have completely taken it away. I believe it would be in the early 1900s, due to the fact that somebody, just if they do not get the weight right and the fall height correct of the person, not only does it not snap their neck, but they end up having to hang for 30 or more minutes to die, which is cruel and inhumane. Now, when it comes to being electrocuted, there has been cases where they have not only put to death minors, which is now illegal, you must be 18 and over, but they have also had instances where people actually have combusted. They've been lit on fire, or they had to be electrocuted multiple times before they died, which is extremely, extremely painful. This is why I believe lethal injection should also be the only source used in the United States to put somebody to death. It is no doubt that, unfortunately, there is a very, very sick and sad history with death penalty in the United States, which just adds to the controversy of it. As somebody who has been a victim of a violent crime, I don't believe that person should have been sentenced to death due to the severity of the crime. However, there is many people out there, unfortunately, that have committed some extreme crimes that, if not stopped, they will continue to commit these crimes, even in a prison setting. Not only does this put inmates at danger, this puts guards at danger, staff members at danger, and possibly even themselves at danger. Without prosecuting people and putting them to death, the populations of prisons would go up. When you minimize the punishment, they are more likely to commit a crime. Without a harsh severity on those things, you're going to have more crime. The same goes for a child. If you stop giving them timeouts and start giving them easier times, they're going to push those boundaries. Unfortunately, this is the same for criminals, and not very many criminals have a very high IQ with this. In order to keep society safe, we need harsh punishments. This is why we need to increase the death penalty. This is why we need to focus on not giving certain inmates the ability to opt out, although families do have the ability to say that they want the death penalty off. which is extremely understandable as some people cannot live with it, no matter how the crime is, which is awesome for them, especially the ones that are able to forgive these people. It can develop a lot of hatred otherwise. But unfortunately, they do need to be punished. And somebody, for example, as Jeffrey Dahmer, who's been going all over social media, he is an extremely, I should say, was an extremely violent criminal. And he even stated in his interviews that he would not have stopped unless he was arrested. Unfortunately, he was not actually able to be put to death, as an inmate did it for us. There are many arguments that you could go back and forth on. There are many very, very valuable points as to why the death penalty shouldn't exist, especially when you look at history. But due to the laws of having to be mentally sound, having to be of legal age of the state, and having to have a certain amount of evidence to be able to prove that without reasonable doubt, 100% this person did the crime, they should be sentenced to death. There's many cases where they planned out the crime meticulously. They carried out the crime, and then they did it again. And these are not people that have done a crime once or twice. These are people that have continued on committing crimes. They don't stop. They don't want to go to prison, but they don't do anything that will actually stop them from committing crimes. And even putting them in life in prison, they're a danger to the criminals there that are much lesser than them, and they will even continue to commit crimes in prison, and they will continue to commit even murder in prison. It's a very controversial topic, unfortunately, but it's something that needs to be done for society. It's something that needs to be done for future generations, as unfortunately, crime was dropping significantly from the 90s until the 2019, but unfortunately, violent crime is now officially in the rise.